Excellent. I'm Patti Armbrister, and you have entered the room for I Stopped Tilling, Now What? How many of you are gardening? How many have a garden? Woohoo, 100%. Boy, I should go home. That's pretty darn cool. Oh, one that says not quite there yet.
I have cottonwood trees.
Cottonwood trees. We're going to start with the timber. Okay. How many of you are no tilling or never tilled? So, two. Good, about a third of you. That's pretty darn good. Right, so we're making progress. And those of you that are in the no-till realm and probably been in a room with me before know that we better head that way, right? The benefits to heading that way are so immense that it isn't even funny. But so when we start, though, it isn't like miraculously we start and then all of a sudden it's fantastic, right? There's some transition in between. So the principles, though, of this regenerative agriculture, and I like to keeping them in your mind because it's crucial that we do them and preferably do all of them. They do work in bits and pieces, but if you have them all together and do them at once, then you're going to make a lot more progress than if you don't. So plant diversity is crucial, that we have plant diversity. Right, so out in the prairie, we went from 140 plants to somewhere in the 500 range, depending on where they sampled. That's how many plants was in the native prairie, and down to a monocrop in our wheat fields. Right, so that's changed everything. I mean, the microbes were living with those masses of diversity, and now they got one plant that's feeding them. So huge, huge thing to be able to have the diversity. So as gardeners, you can get the diversity. Just got to know that that's what you're attempting to do. You want to do that. A live plant in the soil as long as possible. That's really difficult, right? We went from a perennial system in the prairie to now an annual system in our garden. So you got to try to add some plants in here and there that you can get to be a perennial that will help you with a little bit of that. I like to do it with the walkway. And then that was kind of a win-win. Those plants are feeding the microbes, right? So that's key to know. The more photosynthesis those plants are doing, the healthier they are doing, the healthier the food system, and the more there is going to the microbes. The more coming back to the plant from the microbes, the more plant nutrition there is in the plant for us or the animal to eat or whomever's going to eat it, right? That's our goal, is to have as high in nutrients in our plants and our food as we possibly can. So that's my goal to be here today, to help as many people do that as possible. Lower no disturbance. So in our, say it's a market garden, right? We're going to grow carrots. You're going to have a relatively fine place to plant carrots or you're not going to be successful. So that's why the low disturbance is on here. Otherwise, we'd like to go to a no disturbance in our system. Out in the prairie, how many times did Mother Nature till it? She really hasn't, until in the beginning, we went from lichens to rocks, and rocks, lichens, and moving up the ladder, and then the plants made the soil. Right, so you got to remember that's why it's important to have cover crops, and important to have plants throughout the season as much as you possibly can. The plants are making the soil and helping the microbes back and forth. Diversity of animals. Most of us are not going to have chickens, or some of us do. How many do have small animals? Chickens, ducks. Ducks are great. So a few of us. So use those to your advantage. And if I miss telling you how to do that, be sure to remind me in the questions. Those of us that don't, I don't. I wish I did, but I don't. I do have diversity of wildlife in my garden, though, right? So once I went off of the chemical farming and into the no-till system and planted diversity, I started having diversity of all kinds of things, of insects, birds I can't even identify, snakes, toads, and frogs, stuff like that. That's what you want. You want as much of that as possible. And the key is keep the soil covered. So we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. One way nature does it right is we have a big grass plant, a cow or a bovine or bison come by, chew off part of it, graze on, right? the leaf litter, some of the leaf litter falls to the surface over time, and that is your leaf litter that's making a mulch on the soil surface, right? And then you have a diversity of plants doing it. So you have a diversity of mulch going onto the soil surface that's causing those microbes to have food. It's their house. It's their roof to their house, and the nutrition coming from that roof to their house. So we want that. It's going to keep your soils cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, do all kinds of good things for you. Control weeds, help with moisture. But so once we go from no-till, what happened in your first year when you went no-till? Anybody can share experience?
Weeds.
Weeds? Oh, what? You had weeds? Okay, so weeds are a problem, right? One of my forefathers in Michigan State University, the first year the university was founded in 1887 or 67 or 68, started a research project with annual weeds that the farmers were having trouble with. He collected weed seed off of 20 common weeds, red root pigweed, lamb's quarter, mullein, stuff like that. And then he put them away, they buried them, and then they started pulling them out every 5 years and germinating them. This year's the 120th year of the study. Maybe it's further than that, maybe 123rd year of the study. And are they still, any of them still germinating?
No doubt.
No doubt they are. Yes, and so they've decided, well, we're going to, a few decades ago, they lengthened it to 10 years. A new research study person, all right, that guy passed away. So we've had a few hand-downs of this project. But now they're leaving them in the ground 20 years to try to see if they can figure out how many years. It's common mullein, I think, one of the mulleins that's causing them to keep going on with this research. Some of the others have given up. And they put up thousands and hundreds of thousands of weed seeds, right? What we call weeds, right? Some of these are very edible and very good for multiple reasons. Anyhow, we are not going to out-farm the seed bank, all right? Every time we disturb the soil, every time there's soil exposed to the sun and the water, we're going to get germination, right? So if we can stop the trigger of germination, then we won't have those unwanted weeds, what you call weeds. Sometimes I don't call them weeds. You guys call them weeds. Okay, so we're going to need compost, though, to be able to do that. Now, this compost theory I'm sharing with you, I did not found by no means. There's people that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. There's people in Europe that are doing it like crazy and cannot figure out why they can't get every single market gardener to be doing it, that it's that successful. So I study a lot of Richard Perkins' YouTube channel, and he travels all over Europe, going to no-till, no-dig, they call it over there, gardens, and in the first year with compost, they're able to be growing a market garden that looks like, wow, they've been here forever, and never tilled the soil, whatever it is, whether it's clay, rock, or whatever, they're going on top. So, but we're going to need a lot of compost to do this method. Luckily, you guys have the huge advantage of having dirt rich in your community, right? I've not been to any other community that has that as a major resource to be able to use, and a clean resource, right? We're going to try to start making compost piles back east with agricultural products. Huge risk, right? With every bale of straw we bring in, there is huge risk. So you guys have a lot better source here, and an available source is going to help you. This is a farm-style one out in the middle of Montana, and they're doing it for dryland farming. So they're going to be using compost for in lots of different ways. This is Elaine Ingham's, just backyard type composting. So I'm in the camp of everything should be compost. And so we want to use that as such a valuable resource to the grower that it should not be wasted. So how are we going to use this compost? How are we currently using the compost? Mostly spread it on the ground, right? So they've had agricultural studies down, I think in Nevada, where they've spread like several ton to the acre of compost. And they've gotten still 20 years worth of carbon showing positive results from that one application of that compost. But in agriculture, we can't afford to put 20 tons or whatever the tonnage they put down to the acre to be able to grow. But in this situation, they are going to use what I would consider quite a bit of mass of compost. So this is an example from one of the European gardens. And they are using 6 inches. And that's what all of them are promoting, that we need to have 6-inch layer of compost on top of the soil surface. And undisturbed soil surface preferred, but if you've disturbed it, you're starting at 0.1. We're going to start with 6 inches of compost. We are not going to till that in. Just sell the tillers. We don't need them, right? You don't till it in. It's just going to set right on top of the soil surface. This example used cardboard underneath of it. A lot of them that they're doing, unless there's noxious weeds or something, or grasses that are like a crabgrass or something, they're not using a weed barrier. They're just going right on top. So that mass, that 6 inches of compost is suffocating out the whatever plant was there, and they're putting them on in the fall. So they put on the 6 inches in the fall. If it's spring, it is, right, out the door. You start when you can start, right? But they laid these down in the fall, mostly from the workload, right, to get it done. This one, they used wood chips for the walkway. If you're in a climate environment that needs fungi, this is the way to go with wood chips. In my area, it'd be wood chips because we grow grass. If I walked away from all the gardens and left, it'd be grass in a few years. If you walked away from your garden here, in a few years, what would you be growing? Trees, come on, we're going to grow trees. The weeds are only priming the soil for the trees. Well, first came the grass, but your tree's going to beat out your grass here. This is a mountain environment with trees. In Michigan, where I come from, the farmer doesn't have to leave long. You can practically go in the house and the tree sprouted, right? So they're going to get there. So where you have trees, you already have fungi in the soil, if you haven't destroyed it. You destroy it with your tiller and any agrochemicals. But if you haven't destroyed it, it's still there. If it isn't alive and functioning, the spores are there. They're dormant. And they're just waiting for the trigger, just like the germinated seed, to come to life, right? They're just waiting for it to be good outside or inside the soil. All right, so that's the difference between wood chips and if I was going to put in a living live mulch plant for the walkway. Example like this. So this is a garden that I consulted on. This is its 3rd growing season, so we're moving into our 4th now. And we started with soil that was just like this. Solid clay in clumps bigger than your water bottle. The lady grows most of her own food. She is very natural, and she's like, she was not even sure how you could survive in eastern Montana if you're not growing some of your own food, because it's not available in the stores. She's like, I'm ready to quit gardening. And I'm like, what? This is crazy. You can't quit gardening. She's like, you see the bobcat out there with the forks on it? You know, when they have forks this long. Bobcat, everybody knows what bobcat is, right? She said, that's what I use to dig my carrots. And I'm like, okay. I said, so you have a problem, but that doesn't mean you should quit. She's like, what? I'm like, we can convert that clay and make it act like loam. We, meaning the microbes, not me, but the microbes can, and they will. I said, and she knew I was already in the no-till camp, and she's like, oh my gosh. She said, I cannot deal with messy. She's a perfectionist. And I'm like, oh. So I showed her a picture from the Occidental Art and Ecology Center in California. The picture I took, I went to a workshop there. Picture I took, I showed her. It was 38 years of no-till at the time. I showed her this picture. I should have brought you the picture, but I didn't have that foresight. She looked at the picture. I says, is this too messy? And she's like, no, I could do that. I says, we're down. I says, plan your beds any way you want to plan your beds, and we'll get it to look like that. And so we did. We started with compost only, compost extract, not the compost itself, just the extract, right? We couldn't afford to put the compost down.
What's that? What's extract?
Okay, so compost, we have really good compost. We look at it in a microscope and knew we had great stuff. It was stuff that I had created, so I already knew it was great stuff. So all we need to do is put it in a bucket of water in a compost tea strain bag and strain it off. Now, they're aquatic creatures, so they're swimming in the water, right? So then we take that water, and you can dilute it up to 5 times, sometimes 10 times, depending on how much microbes you have in there and what you're attempting to do. But in this case, we wanted to go on pretty straight because we knew they'd been tilling. This garden site had been used since the early 1900s as a garden site. Really poor water, though, in eastern Montana, so that was another problem that was causing her to want to quit, that the water's really poor. So we used the compost extract, and then I had her mulch all the beds, just the beds themselves, with whatever they had, which they had straw, old hay, and cow manure, chicken manure, so, and leaves. And great, diversity, fantastic. And so she put those down on the beds, and then the bare soil was still exposed where the walkways was going to go. And that's where she broadcast the white Dutch clover. This is white Dutch clover. White Dutch clover get about this tall, and we mow it off with a lawnmower. So I told her, I said, the crucial thing is to make sure your pathway is the width of your lawnmower. So hers was 24 inches, so that was a 24-inch pathway. Each time she mows it, the dispatch is going in one bed. The next time she mows it, she comes the other way, right? Dispatch goes into the other bed. What are we dispatching? High nitrogen mulch. In the first year, what did you think her plants look like? Just as green as this. And she's like, wow, this is fantastic. And so I'll kind of walk you through the steps. So after she got the mulch on, we got the white Dutch clover, planted the white Dutch clover in the fall. We got about an 80% take. And so in that other 20%, she planted in the spring. Then she had 100% take on the white Dutch clover. And then she started gardening. Pulled the mulch away, although there wasn't a lot of mulch come spring. What happened to the mulch? Where did it go? What's that?
In the ground.
Okay, who decomposed it? So the microbes did, right? So they're eating it. It's what they're using to live on. So that went down a little bit. That was okay. We pull back, we plant. And then in the bed where she's like, I got pure, she's into carrots, right? She's worried about this bobcat. I'm like, no, we're just going to put compost there. We put on more compost, or brought real compost, put compost on, and she planted carrots in the compost. So we didn't dig down into that clay. She just planted carrots on top. Let the carrots work for us. So they worked for us that year, helped us. Then compost extract once a month on this garden. In a situation where you have compost, which you do, with dirt-rich compost is available, you put it on every week. You think more is better, right? Which went from the diversity of the microbes living with those 500 plants down to what we've done with one plant. Or if we had 12 in our garden, we only have 12 plants. So think of these plants as a year. If I put in 30 plants in my compost, which I shoot for 40, then I have 40 years of monocrops in my compost to help feed those microbes. So you got to think that way, that more is better, right? It's a numbers war, it's a numbers game of war down there with the microbes. The more the merrier. So each year got better and better. By the second growing season, the gardener told her husband that she wasn't ever going to till again. He's like, what? I just bought a tiller. She's like, sell it. I don't need the tillers. Right? So they've never tilled since, and she's always kept soil covered, except for where the carrots go, and that's compost. She hasn't done the 6-inch compost layer. She hasn't needed to. And she also doesn't clean the beds in the fall. Right?
How do you keep the clover from spreading into the bed?
So it doesn't spread aggressively, and we have heavy mulch on there, right? And plant litter. The plants are making the litter. And then she's adding leaves in the fall, and she's adding whatever she has for mulch in the fall.
On her beds?
Okay, on the beds. Yep. Now some clover will scooch in there, but it's not going to be that aggressive. White Dutch is not very aggressive compared to some of your other clovers. And you could use an edger, I guess. Yes?
So to plant seeds or seedlings in the spring, just scooting the mulch or the compost aside and putting it in
Yep.
there. And
Right.
now, does the mulch that's added every fall, does that keep the bed frozen longer in spring because it's like a big blanket on top?
The microbes are working in there. They're working. What happens when you work?
Okay.
Do you get heat? They're creating heat, right? There's a place in Canada, this guy's been into this, but using cattle. He's using cattle to make this layer and get the microbes happy and going. In Canada, it's not even freezing. His soil's not freezing. And they've had orchards that went to regenerative orchards right alongside your commercial orchard, and they get a hard freeze. These trees get whacked and they're dead, and these ones went on and produced. So it's a mindset that we got to shift. And I know we're in a wet climate, and I know you're worried about moisture in the spring, but I think it's going to be okay. Nature does pretty cool stuff. All right, so that's how this would go on the walkways. I'm sure there's other plants we could use, but this is the one that I know works in my environment. Let's kind of catch the questions at the end if we can. Here's some other examples of it, right? So look at the diversity in here. Isn't that awesome? Who wouldn't want that? Their walkways, that's a market garden, so their walkways are pretty narrow, so they're canopying over their walkway quite a bit. So they don't have live walkway, but these others are wood chip walkways. This one's at one of the places that Richard Perkins has on his show. You can go on contour. I do mine on contour because I'm in a very dry climate, so I'll dig the walkway ditch down on contour, right? Fill it like you would with wood for like a hugo, and then add wood chips to it, and that's making a waterway that I can flood. When I flood that waterway, then it's watering the next beds below it. So it's a permaculture tactic. This is Richard Perkins, and here's some of the tools that he uses. In their first year or so, they're starting to even take the broad fork out on some of the farms in Europe, where they've done a test. You know what the broad fork is, right? You poke it in the ground and you can rock it back and forth, and it aerates the soil. It gives us a channel to be able to put the worm castings or the extracts down to get the microbes deeper in the soil. They've done test trials where that even the broad fork is too much disturbance, and the 100% no-till is growing better food than the ones with the broad fork. The broad fork's this big guy with the two handles on it. So rake, wheelbarrow. He's using row cover over there for his flea beetles. This is the compost extracts and teas. A tea is different from an extract, meaning that we're going to actually put it into an air bubbler and create more microbes with oxygen and food source. That gets into a lot more technical stuff of what I'm doing with the microbes. And I've done quite a bit of it, but I'm now in the camp that the extracts are probably better, because if I get my extracts done at the same water temperature as my soil that I'm going to apply it at, those microbes are having a higher success rate of living right away and not go through this crash, right? So they don't like extreme changes. So in an extreme change, they're either going to go dormant or die. In a slow change, they're just going to go dormant. But if there's no change, they stay living. So that's kind of our goal. So with the extracts, more of them live, I think, that will do well. And the compost teas are pretty advanced. So. But this is where for a 5-gallon bucket garden place, this is what I would use as a tea lab. And it's just a 5-gallon bucket, and this is an aerated tube to be able to aerate it. But this is how you'd extract it. You just extract it off. You put it in paint straining bag, which they call compost tea bags, and put it in the water and squeeze it, and the microbes come swimming off of that, and you're just massaging them off that compost. The compost in that bag, don't throw it away though. You want to put that back in your compost because you didn't get all the microbes off of it. Now they're floating in the water, and then we can apply them. How are we going to use that? The number one way that I tell every person, I don't care if you have 10,000 acres of wheat or if you got a bucket to garden in, use a seed treat. So that compost extract has live microbes in it, and you're going to put a little bit of it, and it can be just a mister, and mist your seeds with those microbes. They're going to glue themselves to the coat on the seed coat. Now they're with the seed. You can dry the seed back out if you want to, or go right into growing with it. Either way works, right? Growing with it goes faster. Your germination is going to be quicker. Your roots are going to be bigger and stronger and have a lot more root mass with the extract used as a seed treat. It's your highest return on your investment of anything you can do in agriculture, in my mind.
Could I use that in my flour and water paste for seed tapes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're going to make seed tapes, and so we're going to put the paste out, put the seed on, and then we're just going to use a little squirt bottle on it of mist.
Okay, so not mixing it with the flour.
I think either way would probably work, right? So the microbes, what they're doing is they're gluing themselves to that seed, the coat on the seed, and the seed instantly is getting a communication signal from the microbes. It happens that fast. That it's just blindly, right? It's just nature working, right? When the microbes are there, the plant knows the microbes are there. Now the plant thinks the more microbes that are there and the better balance of microbes that are there, the plant's thinking, this is the greatest place on earth to grow. And the microbes saying, grow, grow, baby, grow. This is the best place on earth to grow. It could be a desert. And the plant is going to grow. It's going to be like, yes, I've got all these helpers. And the microbes are going to help that plant. It's just amazing. Okay, so you can apply it with a water can, a drench, a sprayer, a fogger, any way you can get it out. The sprayers, you do need to make sure your nozzles are big enough and you don't have too many, you don't want to remove your filters because they're going to get clogged up in there. And that'll be a very frustrating day if you're doing very many acres. So make sure that you know that your nozzles need to be big enough to apply them. In a home garden, I just use a water can and just drench it on, right? I'm just pouring it on the plants, the mulch, and the growing beds. In the greenhouse, I use a fogger on the hose, right? Because I'm trying to get it out on everything, and I'm doing 30 by 96 greenhouse, so it's a lot different than in the garden. But you're going to put it on everything, including your root ball, right? Every tree you plant, every transplant you plant, dip in this stuff, right, before it goes in the ground. Apply it when? Almost everywhere, all the time. Most of the market gardeners are doing it once a week on a routine. Say it's Wednesday, we're going to put out compost extract. Or teas, depending on their situation. They're making teas that are combating with diseases and all kinds of stuff. But they do it once a week, religiously during the growing season. I do it about once a month on my home garden, and in the greenhouse, I should be doing it every week, right? If I don't, then I start getting a disease or problems coming up that I could have offset by using this every week. When your plants get bigger, then you're going to want to use a sprayer that you can mist it on, right? Like on your fruit trees, you'd put it on any time that the blossom isn't on the tree. But all the rest of the time, you'd want to use it on the trees. If you're making your own, right, and you have available compost, there's no reason not to. You can't go wrong. If Dirt Rich has got 100 different plants in their compost when they made their compost, including the food waste and stuff, that's a lot of diversity. It's a lot of microbes. It's all good stuff.
Would you repeat that about the fruit trees?
Yeah, so you're going to spray it on the fruit trees, the canopy, everything, the trunk, the ground, everywhere, right? But not when the flower is trying to flower and sets fruit. After the fruit's set, then you can spray again. I'm usually I'm not out there enough to do the fruits that way. So I do them early in spring. You do them right before they break dormancy, and then do them after the fruit is set. And then continue going in the fall, depending on what your problem is, right? So the big orchards have got big problems with moths and stuff that's damaging all the fruit, right? So they are either having to use insecticides or they're doing this, and they're doing this religiously.
But like beans and peas, the flowers on that
That won't matter. Yeah, that'll be okay. Okay, anytime you got a plant that won't recover, like say it's got a disease or something, just discard it. Take it, dig it out, take it and root it all and take it off property. Take it to the only thing I'd tell you, take it to the dump that could have been composted. If you're composting in a hot enough compost, you might be able to deal with it, but it's just simpler to just get it out of the system. Right, lots of the diseases are going to get worse and live in the soil, right, and go from one season to the next season, next season. So, okay, so this is a picture of Nicole Masters from Australia. She's one of my mentors, just unbelievable. She's working in big ag and gardens, but more big ag than gardens. This is an example of a cereal grain. One farmer right next door, same soil type, is the one on her left, and the one that she has worked on is on the other side. This one had the seed treat. This one's had microbes working in the soil in a no-till system for a few years. We want that. We want, when you dig out a plant, which I hope you will, get a shovel, dig in the soil some. We've got to find out how bad our compaction layer is. So you're going to need a shovel to do that. And when you dig out a plant, find out what's going on with the roots. Now your red pigweed, lamb's quarter, stuff like that, they're going to look like this no matter what, right? They don't colonize with the microbes. But your real plant should have dreadlocks. So we want dreadlock-looking roots. Those are the microbes gluing aggregates, soil aggregates to the root. Row covers are needed for insects. We'll talk a lot more about insects this afternoon if you guys come to that workshop. They have, here's some more diversity. So dream big and don't think small and use a lot of color. It's fun. And all that diversity is going to help us with our human health, right? So Dr. Christine Jones from Australia encourages everyone to eat at least 30 plants a week, right? Even if a beef animal ate it, if that beef animal only ate alfalfa and corn, that's 2 plants in that beef. That we want to have that much diversity coming into our diet. If we can get that much diversity in our diet, we're going to get rid of a lot of human health problems. And plus, isn't that cool looking? So this is in the high tunnels. This is at Living Web Farm, fantastic resource. They got tremendous amounts of videos. They are long because they're full workshops. Some of them are 2 hours long. But they are an incredible resource. They have termed the term farmscaping. And it's just fantastic to be able to use plants to help you with pests. And we'll be talking about that this afternoon. So this is summer squash they got running down the center row. That's buckwheat and then rye, where the posts are at, to be able to help them with pest problems. Don't forget to cover. This is how much cover is in a good agricultural field. What's the fields look like around here?
Bare.
Pretty bare. Did they look more like a desert or a prairie? More like a desert than a prairie, right? Mm-hmm. We just got to figure out how are we going to get back to working with nature than to try to control her. We're not winning the controlling. It's not working. Here's a couple more examples. The one on the lower here is an example I love using for potatoes. So if you just put down your compost, put down your compost extract, put your potatoes in that compost, put the alfalfa hay, preferably non-GMO alfalfa hay, right, that hasn't had a lot of chemical use on it. You want pure alfalfa hay. And I like old hay, can be 2-3 years old, already starting to break down. But nitrogen's still there, and the microbes are going to love it. And it's going to really make a fantastic potato bed.
And you just lay it right on.
Layer it right on top, wet it down. And then I'm not at home a lot during the summer, so it's not getting babied. Microbes are taking care of it. The mulch is keeping it damp. Things are going to work. Potatoes are going to grow right up through it. Yep. And then in the fall, all I have to do is come and move the the hay away, and right there the potatoes are. No dig potatoes. You're not digging. But they will be, if you have mycorrhiza in your system, which we want, it's a fungi that's helping us bring the nutrients and the water to the plant. Potatoes are highly colonized with it. They love it. But in our modern way of doing agriculture, they're not living with the potato. But in this way, they are. And I can literally have to force the potato out of the ground. It's not in the ground, it's on the ground, and I'm having to force it out of there. That there's so many roots and so many microbes and fungi keeping that potato attached to the soil surface that you have to fight for it. Yes?
So other covers are just any kind of leaves?
Leaves are great.
Maple leaves?
Yep.
Are there any leaves that are toxic?
I'm sure I would be leery of a walnut for sure, and I'm sure there's some others. So that's stuff that you need to know with your extension agents and different stuff. Just a second. We'll get it through a couple slides and we're going to take some questions. Okay, so that's a heated compost pile. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah. So as that compost is maturing, what's the difference between mature compost and just compost? They know?
Dead weed seeds?
So the heat's going to kill the weed seeds, right? And the heat is going to kill the pest, their eggs and stuff like that. It should curb the diseases. But when I heat it, so in the hot thermal compost method, it's going to get up to 160 degrees. I'm going to have to turn it at least 5 times. Why 5 times? Because there's really 5 sides to this, 4 on the side and 1 on the top. And it's like kneading bread. All of that that's on the outside's got to get in the inside. So it can all get to the 160 degrees. So you knead it or turn it with the purpose. Don't just turn it. You're kneading it. And so you're trying to get the outside to the inside. That's the goal. And do that, and it's going to take you 5 weeks, for that temperature to drop down to air temperature. So when your pile stops heating, starts going back down to normal temperatures, now it's got to rest, right? So what's happening in the micro world? We've had a big explosion of lots of babies and high populations, and now we're eating each other. It's a who eats who world. And as they do, we get to a higher order of microbes in the pile. So it takes some time, and you want that to take place, right? So you're going to get a way better response from your compost that you did in the fall and use in the spring, and vice versa. If I make one in the fall, which I make one in the fall early enough to get the turning done, and just let it rest all winter. When's Mother Nature do the most composting? In the winter. Good answer. Be brave. In the winter. So always make a compost heap. Come late August, September, always. And just let it set. Nature's going to make you your best product then, and use it in the spring. You'd use it as your compost extract, right? Because we already put our 6 inches of compost down in the fall. Now to maintain the beds, we're only going to need to add about 2 inches of compost that they put on to reapply in the fall to get back to where we start again. So we're not having to go back to that 6 inches again, so you don't have to make that investment to get that much on there, but 2 inches we do. Every time it rains, what's happening to your bed?
Leaching.
We're making compost extract every time, and we're not having to do it. Nature's doing it. In that 6 inch, we made a lot of microbes, right? But we needed them because we've been abandoned them for a century or so. So now we want to get this relationship back. Okay, we want to have fun and grow healthy. This is Richard Perkins in Sweden. You can see he's having fun. He uses a lot of birds in his system. Okay, so let's flag some questions because I want to make this as interactive as we can. Yes?
I mentioned earlier that I live with cottonwood trees. I was told to move when I asked how I could garden. Suggestions?
Okay, so are they like a woods and they're all canopied together? Or is there one here and one there?
scattered, I have a cleared area, my garden's in the middle of the cleared area, but when I put in beds, I mean, those went, and filled those beds, so,
Oh, the compost,
oh, yeah. They
Yeah.
send out runners and grow trees everywhere,
yeah, that's part of that family.
so.
Yep. It's going to be a challenge, and I'm about ready to have to deal with the challenge because every seed that falls, if it makes it into the soil, is germinating. So, yeah, I don't know. In the woodlands, it's difficult.
Do you think there's a chance that a no-till garden would actually work in an area?
The Native Americans were farming here before us, right? And they were farming on the creek and waterway edges, right? And they had established fields, not according to our U.S. history books, but they were well-established fields, and they were farming in them. And they were using a method closer to this than anything else that could have been done. Pardon me?
Probably moved every year.
No, they didn't move every year. The Mandans didn't move at all. So,
Well,
I don't know. I put pressure on your universities and see what they can find out.
thank you.
Yes?
When you're planting the seeds, you said to move the compost way down?
Not the compost, the mulch.
Or the mulch way?
In the compost, you're going to plant right in the compost. So like with your paper planter, you're just going to go right through right in the compost.
So then you put the mulch back on top of it, or wait until they...
If you're going to be using mulch. In these market gardens, they're not using mulch. Now the compost became the mulch.
Okay.
Right, so the compost is just dead plants, right? And so it became the mulch in these market gardens that's using the 6 inches. In our garden that you've seen in the east, the no-till one, we're using mulch because we don't have 6 inches of compost. So we're building our own. So how successful is that? You can actually take a potato fork at her house now and go like this and drop it, and it's going to stand straight up and down, and the softest soil you can imagine. You pull back that mulch and you can dig your hand as deep as you want to dig. But you're going to disturb a lot of worms when you do it. Massive amounts of worms working in that garden. That it's just like, you're like, where did the clay go? Right? It's the microbes made it act like loam. Yes?
So if you've got a row of your compost down, and she was saying, you pull it back, you say like carrot seeds, they're like dust almost.
Yeah.
So you plant them in there, you're still gonna cover them back up, you're not gonna leave them open.
Yeah, Todd, Todd, he's in the other room doing the soil one. So talk to him. He's a market gardener, and he told me, I don't know how many, 600,000 pounds of carrots or something he grew this year. It's just outrageous amounts of carrots. He's the carrot guru. Visit with him, but he told me that they're planting right directly in the compost with the seed.
Does he make a seed tape first?
Not on that scale.
Yeah, probably not.
They're using up cedar like Richard Perkins. They have cedars that they get from Elliot Coleman's methods with 4-season gardening, and Johnny Seed sells them. Right.
So the tea that you were talking about earlier, or the extract, what specifically separates your extract or tea from, are you just using manure and
In mine?
seaweed, or what are?
I'm not using much manure because I don't have availability of it.
Okay.
I have availability of it. I don't know what's in it, right? So if they've used ivermectin on the cows, or worse yet, there's long-lasting residual effects of wormers they're putting on animals. If I don't know, I don't get it from them, right? So I'm only using some chicken manure that's all natural organic chicken supplier that's growing their own food stock.
Is that it?
That's what I'm using.
Okay.
But that's because I'm using wood chips. Wood chips is my base for my compost that I'm making in my own yard, is wood chips. You use what you have, right? Whatever you have. I make a good connection with the wood chipper guys, the guys with the power poles. And I just dump them in my yard, in my alley. Sometimes they don't dump them where I want them. Yes?
So can you use like a no-till method with, if you already have established turf down and you want to turn that to a garden plot, is there a way to choke out the turf as opposed to disturbing it?
If it's not quackgrass or Bermuda grass, in the south it's Bermuda grass, you're like, what is this villain? So those grasses are a big challenge. But the other grasses, Richard Perkins and all of those guys are going right on top of it.
Okay, great.
It was 6 inches. 6 inches is a lot of stuff to grow through. You know, so you do it in the fall, so kind of smothering it out.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm like a newbie, so
no problem.
I know maybe 30% of what you're talking about, but I have just a small raised bed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just crap every year, so,
The soil or the food?
well, the soil or the what?
The food.
Both, yeah. So, I've never composted, so, and I had lots of pests. Should I get rid of first the soil that's in there, because of the?
No, not if it doesn't have any chemical residue in
No,
it.
it doesn't, so.
So you can get compost from Dirt Rich here in town.
Dirt rich?
Dirt
Okay,
rich.
so I can start with that.
Mhm.
And then, I'm in East North, so I can use the leaves from the maple trees.
Yep.
Now, do I cover it through the summer, and then I collect the leaves in the winter and compost those in piles?
You don't have to. If you're going to use Dirt Rich's compost, you don't have to do any of that. But
Okay.
so you're going to put Dirt Rich's compost down 6 inches deep
Okay.
and then plant in it.
Okay.
Then let your plants break down,
Okay.
right? So you're not taking them
And
away.
leave them there all winter?
Yep, let the microbes break them down.
Okay, and should I cover that with leaves? Or
No, they're going to make a cover for you.
Okay, good.
Yep. But if you can add leaves, you might have to water them in. I'm in a windy area, so I have to water them in to keep them from blowing around. But
But I don't need to if I use Dirt Rich?
mm-mm.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
My understanding is that we have such an alkaline valley where the water, the river runs over limestone, the water pours limestone onto our gardens, the leaves are more alkalizing. How do you combat that extremely alkaline soil?
Yeah, so if you're just going to use the straight compost, not have to use the leaves.
Oh, okay, no leaves, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
What
Yeah.
about a little bit of sulfur once a year?
So for micronutrients, this is what I recommend my big ag guys do. They've went to no-till, and I'm convincing them to go off of chemicals, right? It's a scary business. They've never been off of chemicals. And their livelihood is reliant on success. Without success, they're going backwards, and they've been going backwards for a lot of years, so the pressure is on. So I recommend that we go off of them. We are going to put on compost and worm castings, right? Worm castings make great extract. So I mix them together to add even more diversity, right? So we're going to put that on big egg scale and do the compost seed treatment on their seeds. Get the plants coming up. When the plants come up and they start getting 3 or 4 leaves on them, this is usually cereal grain or peas or something like that, then we'll clip the leaves, send them to the lab for a plant tissue test. The plant's going to tell us what micronutrients it needs, or if it needs nitrogen. More than likely, it's not going to tell us we need nitrogen. The nitrogen is usually available. It's just got to get turned into soluble nitrogen. The microbes do that for you, for the plant to use. So that test will tell you what your plants need. So maybe I need boron, right? Boron's like the pump to be able to pump everything up and down. You're going to need much. Yes?
So do you not do a soil test, or do you do a soil
We do a
test?
soil test in the baseline to start. We do that in the very beginning. So we already know what micronutrients are available in the soil. We know what P and K and N is in the soil. We send a test off to Earthfort or Earthfort Lab, right, with our microbes and the soil. They tell us what microbes we already have in the soil and if they're active or not, and what nitrogen they can deliver to the plants. Like for example, a really good compost tea or extract or vermicast can deliver 300 pounds of nitrogen to the plant. Do we need to add any? Not even to grow corn, we wouldn't need to add any. The microbes are going to do that. So those are 2 lab tests that you can do. Ward lab is a lab that you can do a test and not figure out which individuals are doing the work. Earthfort figures out which microbes are doing the work. Earthfort's only figuring out if the microbes are there or not. And they can tell you how much nitrogen and the lab ward, or ward lab, is a lot cheaper than earth for, of course, to get the test done. Yes?
I thought maybe the sulfur question was about acidifying the soil, where we're a real alkaline soil.
Oh, on the sulfur? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Not necessarily opposed to
That's what
that.
I've been told in this valley that we
So you can test that with your soils too.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh, I know I'm alkaline.
What I've found from all of my mentors and stuff is you get enough microbes, they're going to make the adjustment. And so none of them have told me measure the pH and worry about the pH and figure out the pH. None of them have even said anything about that because the microbes are going to fix that.
Unrelated, but the nitrogen thing where you're talking about like all this nitrogen available, is that ever a problem for things like peppers and tomatoes that maybe too much nitrogen, you're not setting fruit? And you're just
No,
getting-
this is just what the microbes can deliver. Doesn't mean the plant has to take it up. If the plant wants it, they can. Okay, more questions? Yes.
Is there a cover crop for a smaller, you know,
Yes, I recommend cover crop on half your land if you can.
what would it be?
Oh, of what cover crops to put in?
What kind of plants?
So the guys that do a lot of cover crops tell me I'm not going to pick out your wife or husband, that they won't pick out your cover crop. But that being said, some of the things that I put in my cover crop would be buckwheat if I'm not next to a wheat farmer. If you're next to a wheat farmer, you will have a villain on your hands because one kernel of buckwheat in a shipload of grain going to Korea will get turned around. So don't have it next to a wheat field, but buckwheat is fantastic. We're going to talk about those kind of plants in the pest management workshop this afternoon of how some of those can help you in multiple ways. Yes?
So you were mentioning the tomato plant. So I can start with tomatoes like this, and they're like 6 feet tall. You're pulling them at the end of the year, correct? You just put them down and
No.
cover them over?
I don't even cover them. So the microbes, this is how the microbes feed, right? So the first thing they're going to eat is the extract, not the extract, the root exudates from the plant. The plant's pumping, gets photosynthesis, turns it into energy, pumps that into the soil, right? And when they first discover this, they're like, why is this plant leaking all these nutrients into the soil? It's to feed the soil food web. So they eat those. As long as that plant is doing photosynthesis, that's what they're going to eat. Okay, we have an annual plant, it dies. Now that's not happening. They got to eat something. What are they going to eat? They're going to eat the root of your plant. Any organic matter they can eat. They're going to eat that root of that plant first. When they've made great big channels for your worms and water, nutrients, all things to travel on. That's gone. Now they got to eat something. What are they going to eat? They're going to eat the organic matter laid on the surface of the plant or the soil. They're going to eat that next. That's like us eating our roof. Do we want to do that? No, neither do they. But when your mulch goes down in the fall, you'll see, wow, where'd it go? They ate it because there was nothing else to eat. If I pull my plant, what'd I do? I speeded up them eating their roof because I took it away from them. Let them have it. It's nature's way.
Leave it in the ground, don't pull the plants or anything.
The first time I pulled tomatoes with this, I put down leaves of hay because I was raising a child, I was working on a ranch, running an outfitting business. I was like so busy, I don't have time to deal with weeds or water. So I took the alfalfa hay, put it in slabs and wheat, and made it into walkways. So I had raised beds of tomatoes, not with sides, just cowboy beds, with tomatoes growing, and then straw and hay everywhere I could put it. In the fall, I pulled those tomatoes. That's what we've done for my whole life. You clean the garden, you pull the tomato. I pulled the tomato and it was like, holy, you know what? A 6-foot root. And I'm like, all right, I'm never pulling these again. Because did I have any bottom end rot on my tomatoes that year? None. 0. Right? Because those roots were aggressive and far outreaching to go get all the calcium they needed.
Okay, but if you've got a 6-foot plant that dry as a bone,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the tomato cage around it, right? That doesn't just disappear.
You can cut it. You can cut that down, lay it on the ground.
Cut it off, and
Yep.
then you can pull your cage, but you're just gonna
Right.
leave the.
In eastern Montana, I want to catch the snow, so I leave it. But you don't want to. You want to cut it down and leave it on the ground. But you're going to leave it, you're going to give it back to nature. Give it back to her.
You're gonna cut that plant and lay it down?
Yep. Even my sunflowers, I cut into chunks like this, drop on the ground, and let them be what I walk on next year. Right? They're still breaking down. Fungi had to break that down. Right? Do I want fungi? Yes, I want fungi. The fungi need food. If I only have nitrogen plants, high nitrogen plants in my garden, am I feeding the fungi? No, I'm feeding the bacteria because that's what they eat.
I have one more devil's advocate question.
Okay.
You said
We got
that-
2 minutes.
Okay, the tilling destroys the microbes, but if you had compost on top of your soil and tilled that in, why would that kill the microbes?
You're cutting them up. You're cutting up their house that they built, right? They glued these soils together and made aggregates, and you're destroying it. It'd be like, okay, one year we have a tornado and comes through and just smithereens everything. We rebuild, right? The next year we have a fire. Like, okay, we rebuild. The next year, it's a tsunami. We're wiped away. In the third year, do you think we're feeling like, yes, let's build here? No, they're not. They're like, you know what? Give me a break, right? So we don't want that, right? And the fungi is delivering you water and nutrients, and they're fiber optic. You got to be 400x to even start seeing them, right? That we don't know what we're destroying. We just need to stop destroying. Okay, here's some of them that you want to look up on the web. Singing Frog Farm. Todd, of course, was right next door. Charles Downey, he's one of the founders of the idea. You can take a snapshot of this if you'd like. I'm going to move to another slide. And we're sharing these slides with Free the Seeds. Everybody got a picture?
Ma'am, my question
Yes.
is about the tomatoes. They're a nightshade, so it does not impact the soil to leave those nightshade vines.
Yep, I've never had a problem.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give, regarding this, just, who are you?
Who am I? Good question.
Do you have a book? Is there?
I do not have a book yet. Yeah, my mother's been saying since I was born, you need to be writing a book. Okay, so I'm Patti Armbrister. I was raised in Michigan, a small farm, and an extremely diverse farm, right, from beef animals to market garden. And have been traveling all over the United States since I was young, viewing agriculture. So I've been in all the 50 states now on agricultural lands and seeing what agriculture does. I'm currently an agricultural educator at a high school in eastern Montana. But I am a crazy nut that believes that we can make a better future and we can grow healthy food, that we can become healthy. And so that's my goal, to be here with you, and that is what I want to do.
Indeed.
Yes. Right here.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the website's not up. Right now it's just an email and Facebook. But on Facebook, there's lots of stuff.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.